Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, and if you're a fan of RPCS3 or PlayStation 3 emulation, you're definitely going to enjoy this video today, because RPCS3 just added some new features and updates that's going to make this a fundamentally better experience for everyone emulating PlayStation 3 games. It doesn't matter if you have a potato with a little bit of extra horsepower on it, or you have the most state-of-the-art gaming rig. This is going to benefit absolutely everyone, and those are always the best updates to emulation. The one that's going to give you the best performance possible and the best gameplay experience possible, no matter what system you're bringing. And honestly, every single time I talk about RPCS3, I say how incredible of an emulator it is. And I'll have a Steam Deck guide for RPCS3 emulation very shortly. It is made, I just haven't had a chance to air it yet because there's been a lot of stuff going on. But honestly, this thing just keeps getting better and better. What I want you to focus on every once in a while is if you see a hitch, go ahead and look at the bottom left hand corner of the screen. When you see that wheel spinning, that is shader compilation. And what that means, I'm going to give you the TLDR version of it is transposing all of the calls graphically that would occur on a PlayStation 3, and it's transposing those over to something, a shader cache in fact, that your GPU and your system can understand and draw. Because the PlayStation 3's GPU is unlike anything that you're going to have in a modern system. And for the longest time, I would say people always talk about the shader caching, the hitching, and kind of the fact that it can sometimes be a little bit of a hindrance to getting clean emulation, at least your first time around. Now, of course, once the shaders are cached, you're basically good to go because they will exist as that cache or a saved file for the most part. But it's definitely something on the first gameplay session you would love to have a smoother experience when it comes to caching, and that's what the RPCS3 team is working on right now, and a fundamentally big update to the overall emulation of PlayStation 3 in my opinion, and that is some interpretation for the actual shaders. So if you go over to the RPCS3 Twitter page right now, you're going to see the smoother shader loading on RPCS3. And obviously smoother means there's going to be less hitching, and that is improved shader interpreter visual quality and stability. What that basically means is the interpreter is going to display a temporary approximation while the real shader compiles in the background, which means you're not waiting for the system to actually do something. It has an interpreter before that shader is fully cached in. Now that's not going to be 100% smooth every single time, of course, because it's going to depend shader to shader how big that shader is, how much computational power is needed in the background to go ahead and actually render it and cache it and then present it to you. But that is definitely going to mean a much smoother experience, and I know when people talk about RPCS3, when they talk about 3DS emulation, which of course has nothing to do with this video, but it's just relevant to the overall kind of aspect of shaders, people always say that hitching can drive them just a little bit nuts. And I totally understand that you want a smooth experience, and even if your system can run a game at the native frame rate or higher compared to PlayStation 3 hardware, PS3 hardware doesn't need to shader cache anything because obviously it is just a PlayStation 3. So this is going to just give you better performance overall, and I'm sure it will improve into the future. And that's what I mean when I say this is going to be a fundamentally big upgrade for every user out there, because again, between the potato and the most ultimate gaming rig you can buy right now, they all still have to render those shader caches, so having the interpreter in the background will give everyone better performance. Now of course it's going to benefit some of the higher end machines a little bit more because that shader cache takes less time, but it is still going to be something that absolutely everyone can benefit from, and that's a win when it comes to emulation. Because that's all we ever want as far as video game emulation is concerned, and I'm going to say it, retro gaming emulation, because I do think the PlayStation 3 is retro at this point in time, but you can debate that down below. We want something that performs every bit as good and seamless as the real hardware, if not better, because when you sit down and play a game on RPCS3, you do not want to spend time thinking about the technology underneath how it works. You just want to load up a game, start having fun, save when you want to walk away, and then just come back to it, because emulation that is smooth really is seamless, and you stop thinking that it isn't even PlayStation 3 hardware. And this isn't the only fun update that RPCS3 has up its sleeves, but this is definitely the biggest of the actual month, so that's what I wanted to lead with, that better shader compilation. Because I have you here and you know I'm going to do a soundtrack sample, go ahead and listen to Katamari Forever for 45 seconds because I love the music and I can make you listen to it. Now, additionally, around the edges, there's been some improvements to some games, including some of the earlier versions of Little Big Planet. If you're not aware, the initial 1.0 release has a bunch of differences compared to where it updated, and some features and even music were omitted from the release once they actually got to the 1.2 status. And for the longest time, something before 1.2 just would not run on something like RPCS3. Yes, you could get it to boot, yes, you could kind of get into the overall kind of splash screen, but from there you'd end up in an infinite boot loop, or locking up the emulator completely. And now, as of this current version, I definitely checked it out, everything seemed to work perfectly fine. Now, of course, I didn't play 100% of Little Big Planet to confirm absolutely every single thing worked the way it was supposed to, so you can definitely do that. Leave me a comment down below and tell me how you actually get on, but it is a big improvement for fans of the game, and definitely I am among them. Now, additionally, since the last time I talked about RPCS3, there's been a bunch of improvements on the ARM side of things as well. Don't forget, if you're watching this on a PC, I'm not talking about a Mac, but something like Linux or Windows, you're either on an Intel or an AMD CPU for the most part, and that's going to be an x86 architecture, where ARM is a different architecture, and Mac is kind of on that same sort of space. So when you get improvements to ARM emulation for RPCS3, well, I guess not emulating the ARM, but you know what I mean, you're going to get better performance on that hardware as well. And that little hitch there was me just testing the Steam machine from a previous video, and again talking about that shooter compilation, that would move smoother there as well, and it's going to work the same if you are on ARM. And that really is kind of the thing. There's a lot of different platforms out there, and RPCS3 basically emulates on every single system you could possibly imagine. And that really is a nice thing, because a lot of people talk about wishing that certain emulators or recomps or PC ports would actually work on stuff like Android, ARM, and otherwise. And that's something the RPCS3 team seems to be dedicated to, getting this to run absolutely everywhere you could possibly want it to run. Now, of course, a lot of times ARM systems might be underpowered compared to a standard middle-of-the-road gaming PC. So the performance might not always be perfect, but getting improvements is going to allow for a lot of those kind of lower-end ARM devices to maybe get some games emulating at the native resolution and at full speed. Because that is the thing, you don't have to take every game up to 4K 60 to have fun with PlayStation 3 games or RPCS3. If you have something like an ARM handheld or even a cheap ARM laptop with a decent GPU in there, you can just get better performance, and that's going to be a net win. And that's what it seems like RPCS3 is definitely focusing on in 2026, improving the performance of the emulator, improving the smoothness of it, and the motion cadence with those shader cache renders for everybody, no matter the hardware they have. And it really is nice to have a hardware agnostic kind of workflow where you want to make sure everyone gets the exact same quality releases no matter what hardware they're working on. And I even saw recently they're starting to support some GPUs that I am shocked can even do anything with RPCS3, actually updating it to bring older GPUs into the fold that were never working before. I can't imagine many people even have those GPUs in their systems anymore, but it seems like RPCS3 wants this thing to be the new Doom, which is it can run on anything including a toaster. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me, what are you running RPCS3 on and what are your specs? For me personally, on most of the captures here, it was Steam Machine, but on some it is my editing rig, which is an i9-12900K with a 3080 Ti, and that is definitely a couple years old now, but still can keep up with whatever you throw at RPCS3, so it clearly shows that it does have a lot of performance. One more soundtrack sample just because we can do it, and I'll be right back with a bit more.
Fight one! Ready? Go! KO! Fight two!
And you know full well the RPCS3 dev team isn't on the joke, because they have an unscientific poll right now on Twitter asking what the next system they're going to support is, and I went with the Hot Wheels Speedway PC just because I always remember that thing from back in the day. But if you run RPCS3, that shader interpreter is going to benefit everyone. If you're on an ARM CPU, something like Mac Silicon, you're going to have a better job of being able to actually emulate things correctly and at full speed with the most recent updates. And honestly, everything here is just a fun time. And if you want to play some Little Big Planet, it before the most recent update to that original game, then you should be good to go as well. But RPCS3 and the dev team keep adding more and more stuff, and it's been absolutely fun to follow this emulator in 2026. Because if you took a look at RPCS3 on January 1st, 2026 versus where it is now on August 12th, 2026, as I do this voiceover, it is night and day different. It is massively improved, and when we get better emulation performance and better PlayStation 3 emulation, we're all winners. Sure to that go update, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.